Hi everybody, I'm Jim Swallow. I recently restored a 1990 Miata and I converted it into an electric car. It was really quite an experience and I learned a lot and had a great time, and I'd like to tell you all about it. We live in a somewhat isolated area on the coast of Northern California and have a daily round trip commute of about 25 to 30 miles. Over half of that is at highway speeds of 55 and up to 60 miles per hour. I've been driving this for years in an old pickup truck that gets about 18 miles to the gallon. And several years back, I decided that I needed to get an electric car for this commute. Being a fairly frugal guy, I decided to look at the lower priced end of the electric car market and actually didn't find very much. The cheapest electric car is a smart car. I was shocked to find that it cost $24,000. Gas version costs about half that, so the difference is about half of a lifetime's worth of gasoline. I soon found myself thinking, well, gee, I could build my own electric car for that money. Now, mind you, I'm one of those guys that's always bought a new car and have it serviced by someone else, although I did have a transmission in and out of my first car, a 1948 Willys Jeep, but that was when I was a teenager. Well, okay, I don't just want an electric car. I'd like something small and fun to drive. How about an old Austin Healey or Carmen Ghia, or maybe an old Porsche that didn't run and I could do a little restoration and put in an electric motor? Well, I looked around and found that an old wrecked Austin Healey will cost you anywhere in the 35 to 85,000 range. The Carmen Ghia surprised me at coming in at almost 25,000 just for the old car. So that makes the old Porsche out of the question. So the idea kind of drifted off into the background for a while. Then at a family gathering a few years later, I was having a conversation with my aunt, and I told her this story. And as soon as I was done with it, she looked at me and she said, well, Jim, your Uncle Bill has a Miata out in the field back here. You can have that. It turns out my Uncle Bill used to flip cars for a hobby. He bought a 1990 Miata that had some body damage at a salvage auction in 1994 with the intention of fixing it up and reselling it. But like a lot of these kinds of projects, he never got around to it. They live in Moab, Utah, where he put it in the yard of a rafting company they were running, and there it sat for 25 years. Now, if you put something out in the field around here and come back 25 years later, you'll never find it. But in Moab, it'll sit out there and not even rust. You can pull it up out of its slot, air up the tires, and roll it away. Coincidentally, I've always loved Miatas and even fantasized about having one a time or two. So next time I was out in Moab visiting, I went by and checked out the car. It did look pretty bleak, but on closer examination, it was intact, except for the collapsed convertible roof, which I didn't want anyway, along with one missing fender and light assembly. It had sat out in that dry climate for at least 25 years and was practically rust-free, but there was plenty of sun damage and it was covered with a heavy layer of desert sand. Not only covered, but it was inside and outside of everything. So the next step was to come back and do a little bit of homework and see how easy it would be to get parts, mechanical advice, look into the electrical conversion situation a little bit more deeply and make sure that this was really something I could do. And I found, much to my delight, there are Mazda parts galore. It's the best-selling roadster that was ever made, so there's lots of them and lots of parts, lots of aftermarket parts. The YouTube channels on EV conversions and restorations and auto mechanics are plentiful and seem to suit all the needs that I would have in terms of my restoration. So I said to myself at this point, this is a huge project, but it looks like it's all doable, so let's move on to the next step. The end of June 2018, I hopped into my trusty truck and drove the 1,000 miles to my aunt's place in Moab, Utah. Rented a U-Haul trailer, loaded up the Miata, secured it down, drove 1,000 miles back home. It was surprisingly easy and actually an awful lot of fun, and with no significant glitches or mishaps, along with a little help from my friends. Here I am at home with my new project. So that ends the first chapter of my electric car conversion story. Next time, we'll look into the cleanup and disassembly process.